Hello and welcome. This is NTA Tuesday Live, and I'm Cyril Stober. Nigeria operates a decentralized tax system where each level of government is independently responsible for the administration of taxes within its jurisdiction. Now, the country generates revenue to fund government expenditure through the pulling of taxes from each tier of government, and this has remained a critical driver for development. Now, what are the effects of tax reforms and performance by the relevant tax authorities? The benchmark, generated revenue, tax recovery index, and other crimes committed by payees. Tonight, NTA Tuesday Live will deal with issues surrounding this critical sector. But just before we start our discussion, let's get to see this report put together by Benny Adams.
Anywhere there is commercial activities, there is the potential to get taxes. Taking a cursory look at tax administration in Nigeria, there used to be a time where the Joint Tax Board, a body of 38 tax collecting agencies, go around states to assess impact of taxpayers' money on projects executed, which in turn encourages voluntary tax compliance.
Monthly, I pay my tax, which is being deducted, by the government before my salary comes in as a civil servant. I would say firmly that I'm a taxpayer.
Bosede Ebo is a civil servant. She is part of 20% of 41 million Nigerians who pay tax as a result of the fact that tax is deducted before her salary hits her account. But for many in the informal sector of the economy, the willingness to pay taxes is a challenge.
It's not easy to pay taxes. Only a few, even in the advanced economy. Yeah, people pay tax because they know the big stick will be used on them. Because ordinarily people want to. It's like dipping your hands and you want to pull off your mustache. It's a painful experience. So government needs to look at how do we enforce compliance.
To enforce compliance, experts have suggested that the act of evading tax should be regarded as an act of economic sabotage, punishable by more severe penalties. Others are of the view that the deployment of technology through utilization of multiple data sources is another way out.
Tax administration is based on information, intelligence. If you don't have the information on a particular taxpayer, how do you tax him? If you don't know where he lives, the transaction he has done, when he has, how do you pick up him? So it's now left for tax administration, both at the national and subnational, to up the game in terms of adopting technology.
For better tax compliance, there is the agreement that citizens need to know the taxes they are meant to pay, how to pay, where to pay, when to pay, and why they must pay. For Tuesday Live, Benny Adams, NTA News.
Now, that report sets the tone for tonight's discussion. We'll go ahead and introduce our guests on this program. Let me welcome Hajia Amina Adu. She is Director Emerging and Special Tax, that's of the FIRS, that's the Federal Inland Revenue Service. Thanks for being with us tonight.
Thank you. Happy to be here.
Let me also welcome to this program Mr. Matthew Bajubola. He is Group Lead, Special Tax Group, also of the Federal Inland Revenue Service, FIRS. Thanks for being here.
Thank you very much.
Now, we have three guests who are joining us, and all three of them are in Lagos, and they join us via Zoom. The first of them, let me welcome to this program Mr. Mohammed Nami. He's the Executive Chairman of the Federal Inland Revenue Service, FIRS. Thanks for being with us tonight.
Thank you for having me, Siri.
Okay. Let me also welcome Mr. Olusegun Shosimi. He's Director Large Tax, Telecommunications and Broadcasting Department of the FIRS. Thanks for being here tonight. And we're also joined by Mr. Taiwo Oyedele. He's Fiscal Policy Partner and Africa tax leader, PwC. He also joins us via Zoom from Lagos. Mr. Taiwo Idili, good to have you join this discussion tonight.
Thank you very much. It's a pleasure to be on your program.
All right. At the appropriate time, this program will become interactive. It means that you can join the discussion. Those who are watching, viewers can join in by contributing, their own bit to the issues at stake. But we'll wait when it's about that time and acquaint you with the procedure. But for now, I would like to once again welcome on our guest, just to ask that Mr. Olusegun Shosimi should unmute his mic. I believe once you do that, we'll be able to hear you loud and clear. So it's about tax collection and the national economy. So let's start off by speaking first with the Executive Chairman of the Federal Inland Revenue Service, FIRS, Mr. Mohammed Nami. And straightforward, the FIRS, how far in your service delivery, beginning with the ongoing national tax dialogue? Let's start from that premise.
Thank you very much, Mr. Siris Toba. A good evening to all the audience, particularly the Federal Inland Revenues family and the entire taxpaying community. Let me start by appreciating God that has taken us this far, and to specifically, second time, thank the taxpayers for their support. It is also should be on record that the effort of the FIRS staff is appreciated, and that we as a service cannot do it alone without the support also of the critical stakeholders, particularly our supervisory ministry, the Federal Ministry of Finance, the National Assembly, the consultants, the media, and everybody. We appreciate you and appreciate more the President of Federal Republic of Nigeria that is always there for us anytime we knock at his door requesting him to support us on one issue or the other. Having said that, the national tax dialogue that we had precisely a week ago is the second of its kind since the history of this country. And the main objective of the national tax dialogue is to bring together world-class professionals with the hope of being able to generate expert ideas that will aid tax policy formulation, as well as also strengthening tax administration in our country. We have had two already, and in each of the national tax dialogue, Mr. President was personally there to support us, and contributors were expected, and they did justice to one, examining the role of each level of or arm of government in the Nigerian tax system, with a view to recommending necessary legislative, executive, or administrative actions. Number two, that they were able to do in the two of the dialogues is to propose also appropriate strategies for sustainable revenue mobilization in our country. Number three, they were provided opportunity, and they really did justice to that by suggesting updates to the national tax policy implementation document, and advise the government at the center on the need for the government to effectively implement the tax policy document. They were also able to provide ideas professionally on how to attain better collaboration among agencies of government, particularly the federal ministries, departments and agencies, the Central Bank of Nigeria, Security and Exchange Commission, and other government revenue generating agencies, including ourselves. I think another thing I can remember that they were able to achieve is to advise the government at the 3 tiers to ensure that they digitalize tax administration in Nigeria. They also provided expert ideas for efficient management of national tax expenditure. And last that I can remember is that they were able to recommend measures that will promote collaboration, particularly as far as information sharing is concerned among revenue generating agencies in order to optimize revenue for the Federation.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right. Just to put this clearly for us, what would you say is what's the number of Nigerians captured in the tax net?
Well, as it is today, the statistics is still around between 40, 41, 42 million. The reason is the data is not as reliable as we want it to be, but we are working closely with the subnationals, that is the revenue authorities of the 36 states and the FCT making 37, together with the Federal Ministry of Communication and Digital Economy, particularly through the agency that has a lot of data that has to do with both primary and secondary taxpayers in Nigeria, that is Nigeria Identity Management Commission. So with the little we have done with them and the fact that we are still auditing the figures and making sure that we establish the desired data integrity, we are estimating Nigerian taxpayers, the primary tax, using the primary data to be in the region of 41, 42 million.
Okay. All right. Thank you so much. For 42 million, well, expectedly, you want to expand that net, but we'll talk about that shortly. Let's go over to Mr. Olusegun Shosimi, who's a Director, Large Tax, Telecommunications and Broadcasting Department, still of the FIRS. And let's get your opening comments on that. First, put in true perspective for us, the question of large tax and how this reflects in the overall operations, and if this translates to a larger percentage of the revenues that the FIRS has been able to collect.
Okay, thank you very much, Cyril. The segregation of the tax sector into the large, the medium, and the small is because of the fact that 80% of the contributors to the revenue pools are in the large sector. And those are taxpayers that have 2 billion and above in terms of turnover. We have the less than 2 billion to 500 million in the medium sector. And we have those who are less than 500 million in the small and micro sector. And the majority of those in the large sector are conglomerates. And they have well-structured accounting system and tax system. And they really do contribute their quota. Over the years, 70%, 80% of the total revenue that we collect actually comes from this sector. They are mainly in the oil and gas sector, telecommunication sector, the multinational entities, and conglomerates. So by and large, we have benefited from this segregation, and those taxpayers are largely compliant. Their compliance level is very high, except for where they have real issues. 95% of them actually file their returns and pay their taxes as and when due. So it's good for us to have focus on this subsector, and it's delivering the dividend.
All right. So for these are mostly corporate organizations, and you're saying their compliance rate is actually high.
Very high.
Okay. What about the medium and the small?
Okay. The medium companies, like I said, are those who have turnover below 2 billion and above 500 million. And when we started, they were in the range of 1 billion and 200 million. But we have to increase their turnover threshold so that we can have more focus on those who are 2 billion and above. But largely too, they have been very compliant. At least for them, we can say we have about 70% compliant in terms of filing and payment. But for the micro and small, that is where we have the prevalence of the informal sector. And for them, we have to encourage them to come into this tax net. So there are a lot of incentives for them. Mm-hmm. Like if you're a company with 25 million incentives for you, your payment is at 0%. And they are actually very large because the informal sector in the country have about 80% of operations in the country. Very large informal sector. And we have to encourage them to actually come into the net. But every company that is registered in Nigeria is actually expected to file returns. So we're not saying they should not file. We only encourage them to come into the tax net, enjoy the benefit while they are still small, grow, and be part of the larger tax-paying public.
All right. Okay, thank you so much. We're getting there and things are getting clearer. But let's go over to Mr. Taiwo Oyedele at this point in time. Now, we've listened to the Executive Chairman of the Federal Inland Revenue Service, as well as the Director of Large Tax, and reeled out these figures. 80% compliance by the large corporate organizations, about 70%. And still talking about enough room to expand. And of course, the executive chairman has also given a lowdown on the national tax dialogue. Now, as an expert in this field, Mr. Oyedele, let's look at this. Is Nigeria, given its population, overtaxed, undertaxed, or we're just doing fine?
Thank you very much, Cyril. That's a very interesting question. I think the answer to that question would vary depending on the segments of the tax-paying public we are looking at. I think that overall, Nigeria is not collecting enough revenue from taxes. A lot of progress has been made, and we need to commend the FRS as well as the Joint Tax Board for this progress that they have made, but a lot more still needs to be done. So if we disaggregate the taxpayers in Nigeria, and I'll start from the bottom of the ladder. So I do think that the bottom of the ladder is overtaxed. And when I say they're overtaxed, I also need to clarify that these taxes are not all formal taxes supported by law. So in fact, you have a lot of informal taxes. We had some reports saying that in Lagos State, agbureaus collect over 120 billion naira every year just from levies. And this does not go to government. But as far as the people who are paying are concerned, they have paid taxes. And it is the duty of government to ensure that these informal taxes are converted to formal taxes, and that when people pay, they get the benefit for paying taxes. So at the bottom of the ladder, I do think that the taxpayers are paying too much. Until recently, we didn't even have threshold for VAT until about 2 years ago. Our threshold for personal income tax exemption is very small, lower than what you get in Ghana, in Kenya, in South Africa. So what that means is, to a very large extent, we are taxing poverty. And the way I do the analysis is, if you go by the United Nations estimates, about $1.90 is what you need per person, so you don't fall below the poverty line. So in Nigeria, the average size of a family is 6. In that family of 6, on the average, if you're lucky, you have 2 people working, usually the father and the mother. So if you do that calculation of $1.90 per day for 6 people, when 2 people are working, it gives you about 70,000 naira per month. So if you are taxing anyone who earns less than 70,000 naira per month, you're essentially taxing poverty. When you move up a little bit to the middle class, to the medium-sized companies, what you find there is, I'll say the taxes are about right. The tax rates in Nigeria are not the highest in the world. Apart from, say, company income tax, personal income tax rate is moderate. VAT is one of the lowest in the world. And then when you go up there to the large ones and the elites, you want to say maybe they are not paying enough, particularly for the individuals, because the personal income tax rate collection to GDP, even for low-income countries, is about 2.1%. In Nigeria, it is 0.5%. So it's not even up to 1/4 of what we should be collecting just from personal income tax alone. And the other dimension to that question is the fact that we do have too many taxes. And this was the main focus of the National Tax Dialogue, to say, how do we harmonize the number of taxes we pay? In addition to that, we have too many agencies trying to collect revenue. What you then find as a result of these too many taxes and too many agencies is that even beyond the taxes that Nigerians pay and companies pay, the cost of compliance is very, very high. And the inefficiency is very, very high. And the leakages are enormous. Such that overall, sometimes you find that many Nigerians and businesses pay so much, but government collects so little. So it's a mixed bag, as I would like to put it.
Okay. They pay so much, the government collects very little, which means somewhere along the line, those revenues are bleeding out. But we'll return to you in a short moment. Let me take the conversation to Haji Amina Adu, Director, Emerging and Special Tax of the FIRS. First, people would like to know what the special tax is. Well, emerging might be self-explanatory, but certainly special.
Okay, thank you for having me. The special taxes and the emerging are the electronic money transfer levy that we pay, the 15 naira per transfer, and also a very old tax, which is the stamp duty. So it's also under the special tax bracket, and any other new revenue lines that we develop as we move forward in trying to improve the tax to GDP.
Right, good. So first thing I'll hold on, like many people who are listening to you, is the old one you talked about, stamp duty. Not so long ago, there was a raging controversy over the stamp duty. How has that been resolved?
The National Assembly, by virtue of the Finance Act, has designated FIRS as the sole authority at the federation level to collect the stamp duty. There is a difference between stamp duty and adhesive stamp. So we need to be very clear on that. And the NIPOST is only in charge of producing adhesive stamps. So if FIRS, as per the Finance Act, requires to procure adhesive stamps for the purpose of paying the what we call the flat stamp duty of 15 naira 500, then we can procure those adhesive stamps from NIPOST.
Well, just to be clear,
the
the adhesive stamps also attached to official documents. Aren't they?
Yes,
Right,
that is
okay.
the stamp duty you are paying. So if we procure from NIPOST if we need to give to taxpayers who require it to pay a stamp duty. Yes, but if you can also, the law allows you to buy an adhesive stamp and stick it to your document as a stamp duty that is not ad valorem. Now the stamp duty that is a percentage, like when you buy a property, or when there is a lease transaction or an agreement, you're supposed to pay a certain percentage of it. Like for lease, it ranges from 0.78% to 3%, depending on the tenor. Now that is a stamp duty that is payable to only either FIRS or the relevant tax authority of the state government. And the Finance Act has made this very clear. So FIRS is the only entity at the federation level that is authorized to collect stamp duty from transactions between corporations or between corporations and individuals or between a group of individuals like partnerships. So there's no controversy. The National Assembly has resolved it.
Okay. Well, we might just say it has been resolved, but
Absolutely.
there was one.
Yes.
I do recall a series of meetings that went on where NIPOS now you say, well, if the FIRS requires those adhesive stamps, then it procures them from NIPOST.
Yes.
Otherwise, parties involved in transactions can go ahead and procure those stamps and stick them on their documents.
Yes.
Okay. Well,
For stamp duty that is supposed to be paid by adhesive stamp, 15 naira 500.
Okay.
But when you need to pay a stamp duty that is a percentage of the transaction, like a lease or a purchase of a property or a transfer of property, you have to come to FIRS and make sure the duty is properly assessed and you pay it. Or alternatively, you go to the website stampduty.gov.ng and everything is there for you to be able to ascertain the stamp duty and you make your payment.
in the matter of leases, especially for landed property, one would be tempted to ask how successful has this been in paying stamp duties on those leases? How compliant have property owners been with that?
Yes, if it is a transaction between individuals, then of course it goes to the state government.
Right.
Yes, but if you want good title to your property, you have to pay your stamp duty. Otherwise, you don't have good title, and if you have a dispute and you go to court, it cannot be tendered as evidence.
How do you rate the compliance with that?
For stamp duty, it's very difficult to talk about compliance because it's the net is practically anybody who has a transaction.
Right, but you do know what you see. Where I'm going is that transactions take place, but so many transactions take place. Who is there to pore over those books and make sure those duties are paid?
It's more a matter of, when it comes to stamp duty, as I said, it's more a matter of voluntary compliance because it is in the interest of the taxpayer. Remember, if you have a dispute, you buy a piece of land and you have a dispute and you go to court, you cannot tender that document as evidence unless it is stamped. So it is very, very important that the public realizes the importance of paying stamp duty.
Okay, which will all bring us back to the question of this drive that's been going on. But we'll raise that. The FIRS has been going around, and driving information on the need for people to be compliant, the civic responsibility. But we'll come to that. Let's first talk to Mr. Matthew Majubola, the group lead, Special Tax Group, and we're expanding the discussion here in the special taxes, right?
Yes, thanks very much, Cyril. And I pick it up from where my colleague stopped. When we talk about special taxes operations, we are looking at those specific functions within the FIRS, which is not common before, had not been with us before, that we are bringing in to modernize the administration of taxation. Part of it is what my colleague has spoken about, the margin and special taxes. And if you permit, you were asking on how do we drive compliance in respect of stamp duties.
Yes.
She had mentioned that stamp duties is one of those taxes that is self-policing because it is in the interest of the payer to pay. Otherwise, if you get to certain crossroads, you may regret not paying. That's one. Number two, a part of what FRS is doing is that we're doing a lot of taxpayer awareness. I'm trying to explain to taxpayers why they need to comply with these taxes. But beyond that, I can say that for corporate entities are largely compliant when it comes to stamp duties on leases. I think when it comes to individuals, because that is not within the remit of FRS, that is with the relevant state authorities, we are not able to gauge what the compliance level had been there. But beyond that, part of what is special in the operations of FRS today is the use of data, verifiable data, to run tax administration. Before, taxation has been run on manual basis, on a human judgment basis, but looking at the business terrain in the current millennium, you see that most businesses are migrating more towards digitalization. More businesses are now moving online and all of that. And that has its own peculiar challenges for tax administration, where the processes are manual and not using verifiable data to police the taxpayers. And so part of what we're doing in special tax operation is being able to mine data from different sources, from people's social media, transactions online, financial transactions, all of those things, is for us to now put in infrastructure that enables us to see those transactions, track them, and connect them to the relevant taxpayers. And such that when our tax auditors come to a taxpayer, the tax auditor is not coming empty-handed. It has some pre-information, pre-knowledge of some transactions of the taxpayer. And so in ages past, I recall when I joined the system a few years back, you go to audit a taxpayer and you see 2-3 different set of accounts for the same taxpayer for the same period. And then you begin to say which of this is correct. Because you find out that some companies prepare an account when they want to get loan from the bank, it's a separate account. When they want to talk to their shareholders, it's a different account. And then when they want to file tax returns, it's a different account. But now, what we are doing is making that almost impossible, such that we have data ahead before you even bring your returns to us. So these are some of the special things we are doing in FRS to move the service away from purely manual and subjective basis of administration to using of data and more scientific basis of saying this is the way to go.
All right, we've had our introductory statements across board, but we do also have a number of reports, a couple of reports tonight, really. And so we'll take our first report on the subject matter tonight. This one is from Lagos.
Taxation remains a critical source of revenue generation for the government to execute infrastructural projects. In a cosmopolitan city like Lagos, that is also the commercial nerve center of the nation, a large amount of the state resources is spent on facilities to ensure adequate security of lives and property, provision of other social amenities and modalities for ease of doing business.
Lagos State came into adulthood when there was that controversial withholding of the local government council funds, and it forced the government of that day to look inwards into alternative means of generating revenues. And that has proven to be a very significant breakthrough for revenue access to be able to go on to develop infrastructural projects across the state.
In Q1 and half-year data released by the National Bureau of Statistics, Lagos State generated 127 billion naira and 267.23 billion naira respectively in 2021, as against the 180 billion naira and 360 billion naira projected in the 2021 budget. Tax consultants give reasons for the gap.
If business environment is not conducive, people will want to evade or at the least avoid tax.
Although there are noticeable developmental projects within the state which signals judicious use of state resources, experts of the view that more needs to be done in the area of attitudinal change towards taxation, including exploration of other windows of revenue generation by the state.
We still have quite a bit of work to do in respect to harmonization, implementation, and administration of our fiscal process within the state.
The state government will then need to approach revenue collections and taxations with every sense of deliberation and every consideration, knowing fully well that these are lean margin businesses. Although they are profitable, they are nonetheless lean margin, and they must be sustainable.
The Lagos State government has continued to deploy various flexible means of collection for both human and capital development, without inflicting pains on taxpayers. Financial experts believe that this will encourage more people to pay tax.
All right, from Lagos, it's on to Kanu, where we have another report coming from.
Tax is very fundamental in every nation in the provision of infrastructure, education, transportation for the good of livelihood of the country. Despite being Africa's largest economy, Nigeria is the lowest in tax collection, with GDP ratio at 6% due to public debt, which accounts for over 62% of the revenues collected by government. This predicament, experts say, is very alarming, not only to the federal, but state level as well.
So long as we're not able to generate revenue, we're relying solely on the crude oil we have from the cultural economy. We're not likely going to provide for what we needed in terms of reducing poverty, in terms of raising the living condition of people, in terms of being able to produce quality goods. And that is, if you look at our markets now, virtually they are all saturated with foreign goods. We cannot, because we don't have the means to channel those things to provide what are required in terms of the fundamentals. The fundamentals are the basic infrastructure we require.
In Kano State, statistics have shown that revenue collection stood at 15 billion naira in 2021, but poor tax compliance and political economy made it non-realizable.
You will find a situation whereby the tax officers will be able to do well. To do well in terms of probably apprehending certain people or certain businesses that they have to pay X and Y. But at the end of the day, the government may come over the door and now relax those things, asking them to allow them or to take 20% of that, 30% of that. Okay, we know the cases of all these communication companies. We know the cases of some banks, okay, and some institutions and some organizations. And some organizations were equally belonging to government officials. They used to become untouchables.
Experts believe that for tax system to be vibrant, public awareness or regulations has to be reviewed and tax-based expansion to play its roles.
That report from Kanu. Well, I'd like to return to the matter of personal income tax, and let's go to the executive chairman of the FIRS once more. Now, I just like you to look across board. The question of personal income tax, the compliance, and where this feeling comes from, where generally, I'm sure you must have heard that the small chaps who earn very little by way of paid employment pay their taxes because it's deducted at source, but you do have big-time fat cats, individuals going around and some of them openly displaying huge amounts of wealth. And no one is quite sure what kind of tax they pay. What's your take on that?
Okay, thank you very much for this very important question. I know deliberately the third party, the person from the other side of the divide, has made those distinction in order to set us up. That be as it may, I think we're taking proactive measure, just like he also rightly pointed out. We set the ball rolling first during our joint task board meeting in Kaduna, sometimes in the year 2021, precisely our 147th joint task board meeting. These issues were discussed. We look at the fact that in other jurisdictions, people that are ordinarily paying taxes in Nigeria are exempted from doing so in many countries, including African countries, some African countries. So that is where we started our conversation. We also observe that the middle class are neither here nor there, because some of them that are in paid employment, as big as their salaries are, they are not able to dodge or escape from the tax net. Then comes the issue of the high network individuals. So what we did was to come up with two suggestions. The first one was to come up with a software or a technological solution through the concept that we discussed before the meeting, deliberated strictly during the meeting, and came to a conclusion that we must have data for us to be able to bring these people to tax. So that was the first step we have taken. And what did we agree as far as that data for tax project is that one, Mr. Cyril Stoba, for instance, is an high net worth individual, and he runs into good luck and makes a lot of money. One is taking his child or his grandchild to school. He discloses his unique identifier, or what we recently began to call digital identity. You disclose that your number that is going to be given to you. I will not tell you the source of the number for now. Then while you are going to pay school fees for your children, your associate, or the orphans that live with you, you have to disclose who you are by way of that unique identifier. If you are going to buy land in Mina, where myself and you live, before you are able to pay for that land or stamped the title document of the property, will also ask you for that unique identifier. If you are going to the bank for purpose of opening a bank account, so for virtually every economic activity, we have a number that we can say this belongs to Mr. Cyril Stoba. So for everything we do, we are able to see you clearly. And then if you don't come forward to pay taxes, we will now ask the appropriate state where you are resident, predominantly resident like Mina, to raise assessment so that you pay. So we are getting to a situation whereby even if they don't come, the technology, the strategies we're adopting, the states where they live will be able to reach out to them. The second thing we're trying to do is that the most important, the greatest problem today we have in Nigeria is that we have multiple tax administration agencies and multiple taxes. As the way the issue of multiple taxes also create problem for us as far as the Agberos tax, the roadblocks that people do, yet the government that employ them are not able to collect that, is that there are too many agencies of government that administer tax. And that is why we have dedicated this year's tax dialogue to the concept of harmonization of a tax administration system. If you go to Ghana, our neighbor, if you go to Rwanda, if you go to virtually every country, including South Africa and our colonial masters, the UK, they have single revenue authority. So we feel when we take these proactive measures, the states, the local government and the center will have enough revenue to run or to fund their budgetary requirement.
All right, that's good explanation there you've made, and ordinarily that would seem like a novel way that will make sure that such high net worth individuals are captured in the tax net and they pay their taxes. But just a moment, I'll go first now to Mr. Oyedele, and I'll return to the executive chairman. Now, Mr. Oyedele, it's the era of politics. And it's in the air, and you look around the country and people are paying 25 million, 20 million just to express interest in holding political office, and then they go on and spend hundreds of millions mobilizing crowds and things like that. And yet, this is in an economy that we say is struggling. So what can be done about those individuals? I mean, the executive chairman has just talked about developing an app, a way that will capture these people. But knowing the wily ways of the politicians, how can this be done?
Yeah, so this is an excellent question. We talk about leadership, problems with politicians, and all manner of things in Nigeria. Interestingly, I do think that tax is one very important tool that we can use to make sure that we even have good leaders. And this is how it works. So as of today, if you want to be a senator, a governor, or even to be a president, like you said, the amount they're asking people to pay to just collect forms are mind-blowing. And then the politicians, in their usual manner in Nigeria, you say that someone has bought it for you, or some youths came together. Again, with what the FRS chairman said, very soon we should be able to track those youths, where they made the money from and what kind of money they made to be able to volunteer to buy forms of 40 million naira. But having said that, we need, as a country, to start thinking about taxation beyond just the amount that is paid. We have to look at it from even what the Constitution says. It says you must declare your income honestly and pay your taxes. So if I'm worth 10 million naira in terms of income in a year, and I've paid taxes of 20,000 naira, even though I have paid taxes and I have a tax clearance certificate, I do not have the moral right to be a leader in the country. When Barack Obama was first elected in 2008, he had a nomination for one of the secretaries, like ministers in Nigeria, and the IRS in the US would normally go ahead and do their job. And they found that this guy had paid about $100,000 in taxes instead of about $108,000. He had underpaid by $8,000, and his nomination was withdrawn. And I said, well, for America, it's not about the $8,000, it's about the message. So what you find in Nigeria is a lot of our politicians are not even tax compliant. In fact, I have to tell you that the Auditor General for the Federation, in one of the audits done a few years ago, discovered that even the National Assembly was not even remitting the PAYE they were deducting on their staff. The good thing about ensuring that everybody pays the right amount of tax, especially when you want to hold political office, is that it takes decent people, it takes people of character to be able to declare faithfully their income and pay the right amount of taxes. And if we just focus on this particular point, we'll begin to clean up our political system so that the right people will lead our country, and therefore we'll begin to see development beyond even generation of tax revenue.
Okay, so I'd say we'd go back to the executive chairman of FIRS and the question of pay as you earn. And that's another part of it. Deducted, not remitted. How have you coped with that?
Well, thank you very much. I think these are about the best questions that have been asked of recent. And that I would like, first of all, to continue from where Mr. Taiwo stops. If you look at the issue of pay as you earn, that was deducted at a certain level and was not remitted, it points to some very key issues that we must try to avoid through, at least at the point of politicking in Nigeria. The ugly thing is that apart from people not even paying or declaring their income honestly, as mentioned by Mr. Tayo, and what advanced countries like the United States has done to even one of the brightest persons on earth, is that when you don't pay taxes in good time, you're not even declaring it the way it should be. But at one point, did you even declare? And at what point did you even pay? You want to be the governor of the state I come from, or the local government chairman of the local government I come from. That is when you quickly go dispose your properties or go to your bank account, withdraw a lot of money, run it to the local government tax authority or the state internal revenue, because now you want to be chairman of a local government. You want to be in the state house of assembly because you want to be a governor. You now have deemed it necessary that you should pay taxes. I think at that point, if we are serious as people, that person should be disqualified by INEC, because in the first place, he does not trust the system that he wants to manage. So he shouldn't be giving money, the taxpayers' monies to manage in the first place, because if not for the political position that he has indicated interest to occupy, in the first place, he will not even pay taxes. That is the first thing I want to point out. The second thing is that there should be synergy between INEC, Code of Conduct Bureau, Judiciary, and the State Internal Revenue Service of the state that these people are either resident or where they want to contest certain positions. This has become necessary because INEC in Nigeria should be in a position not to clear people to contest elections, provided they've not paid these taxes in good time. And the judiciary too should help the system in such a manner that you hear somebody who has declared 10 million as his total income in a year, go somewhere to buy from, just like Mr. Taiwo said, 40 million watts. There is already a gap there. Secondly, that person will now go ahead after election as governor and fill Code of Conduct Bureau form and say that he's worth 50 billion naira. Somebody who has just declared income of 10 million naira as the total income earned by him is now telling Nigerians that he is equally worth well over 50 billion naira. So these are issues that judiciary should close their eyes and take critical decisions. These guys are not supposed to be in positions of power. Even if they win election, they cannot be trusted, because what they are just indirectly telling you as citizens of Federal Republic of Nigeria is that they have come in poor, but this is where they want to get to when they are leaving office. It's just a typical way of estimating their worth at the end of the position, at the end of the tenure or the positions that they are occupying. I think my take is that INEC, Code of Conduct, Judiciary, and the State Internal Revenue Service need to do something about this.
Okay, let me bring in Mr. Shosimi, who's Director of Large Tax, Telecommunications and Broadcasting Department. And this also has generated a lot of debate among Nigerians, particularly the telecommunications companies. Now, earlier on, you said the large corporate organizations are up to 80% compliant. But I want to zero in on telecommunications companies per se. Many Nigerians would say to you that they're paying so high for services that are not the best from these companies. And yet these companies are seen to have huge resources. A lot of it, sometimes, if they're not indigenous companies, those huge funds are repatriated somehow. But then Nigerians would also question, what is the tax compliance of these companies and what kind of tax do they pay? I'm saying this specifically because this is what you hear. The public complains a lot about how they're exploited by these companies and how no one seems to know if they really pay taxes commensurate with what they make from the consumers.
Okay, thank you very much. My earlier statement is about the fact that they are largely compliant. And compliance and adequacy are two different issues. So what we do in terms of the adequacy is to do a lot of audit, specialized audit and investigation of their activities. But we have identified their revenue streams. And we also identify everyone that works in that along their value chain. So it's difficult to actually say that the telecommunications companies don't pay. They cannot remit taxes outside the country without being monitored. The issue about their the taxes they pay companies income tax at the rate of 30% of their taxable profits. And they pay value-added tax on their services. When they sell their assets, there's a capital gain tax that they pay. And companies in that sector really don't enjoy incentives. They're not in the pioneer net. So what we need to do is monitor their revenue stream and make sure that when we go for our audit, we have sufficient information to be able to make sure that their taxes are adequate. Telecommunication companies there are not so many in the country. There are large ones, like we have the major telecommunication companies. There are just like 4 of them, the major telecommunication companies. Then that's the GSM companies. Then we have the ones that provide infrastructure. Meanwhile, when they started, it is the same GSM companies that were running their infrastructure. It's by their investment that they now have other companies that are running the infrastructure services. So we've been able to categorize them. We have those who provide internet service, and we know really what their revenue streams are: voice, data, etc., etc. So they hardly can hide. They don't have anywhere to hide. However, whether their taxes are adequate is a secondary issue, but that they're not compliant. Mind you, these companies paid a lot of money to obtain the license to operate. So it's something that we also have to take into consideration because it involves a lot of revenue, capital outlay. And everybody goes into business, you invest your capital outlay and you want to recoup. So we give into their capital expenditure, we give into their operating expenditure, but we need to be sure that those expenses are wholly, exclusively, necessarily incurred before we grant. But what they pay for companies' income tax is 30% of their total profit after we've allowed all their annual capital and operating expenses. But by and large, they are compliant. I can say that. What we have also done is to do specialize, the way we specialize the operations, we also specialize their audits. So we have people who really understand their operations to go into their system to check their activities. The same way we do for those who are in the oil and gas sector and those who are into aviation, construction, maritime, and stuff like that. Thank you.
All right, at this point in time, we'll take a short break. When we return, the phone lines will be open and you can get to join the conversation in the studio. And we'll be back with many more issues, bordering on taxation, the Nigerian economy, and other related matters. Stay with us on NTA Tuesday Live. We'll be back shortly.
Ever-busy ancient city of Onitsha is a commercial hub with millions of commuters seamlessly linking other states daily for business, leisure, and other purposes. To upscale its road network, the construction of a 1.6-kilometer-long second Niger bridge, including a 10.3-kilometer highway furnished with other infrastructure, has been in motion by the federal government. This project will ease congestion on the existing 56-year-old Onitsha bridge and boost the economic capacity of the state as it easily connects to other parts of the country. The completion of the world-class second Niger Bridge Onitsha will be one of the many proud moments of the state, its people, Nigerians, and foreign investors. Onitsha, which hosts the largest market in Africa, is geared up to boast of an impressive road network. Once again, these moments are made alive by the federal government and its
NTA Tuesday Live, a network issue-oriented innovation talk show.
Thanks for staying with us. At this time, the phone lines are open. The numbers will be on your screen. You can take advantage of those numbers and call in. However, we say this every Tuesday. If you do call in and your call gets through to the studio, remember to turn down the volume of your TV set. That's the way to avoid the hurlback or the echo. And we also encourage you to go straight to the point. Do not bother about the greetings. Hello, a mere hello is enough. Go straight to the point. Keep your questions or comments as brief as possible so that others can get on the platform and also air their views. Whatever issues you raise, our guests will take them on and comment on them as well. So here we are with Tuesday Live. It's about tax collection, the national economy, and even as I speak, I hear that the phones are already ringing and there's a caller online, except we're trying to get through to the caller, and in a moment or two, we'll be linking up. Yes, we have anyone on the line immediately? All right. Okay, so we'll get those calls coming through. But back here in the studio, let me come back to Ajay Amina Adu, Director Emerging and Special Tax.
Digital companies